RBT family, what's the deal? It's your dog Willie Jack, and we are back, baby, back with more NFL action. How's everybody doing? How you feeling? Hope you're feeling good. Hope you're feeling great. We are getting down to the wire, man. We are here. We at the Final Four. There's 2 games left before we find out who's going to the dance. It is the NFL's Final Four. The AFC and NFC championship games will be this weekend. And honestly, I'm super excited about it. I love both matchups. And then also, it's going to be, I think, honestly, realistically, I think it's probably been the 2 best teams in each conference all year. If we look at it on the whole, we've got the Denver Broncos hosting the New England Patriots. So that's the 1 versus 2 matchup in the AFC. And then in the NFC, we're going to have the number 1 seed Seattle, I always want to say Super Sonics or Super Seahawks. I don't know. Seattle Seahawks, they're going to be hosting division rival Los Angeles Rams. Now, the Rams are the 5th seed, but I think by and large, the Rams, probably even more so than the Seahawks, honestly, until the home stretch of the season. But the Rams were considered a top 2-3 team in the league across the greater majority of the season for sure. So I think on the whole, these are probably 4 of the top 5 teams that we've seen in the league, and these are the Final Four that we get this season. And so, I think it actually, everything actually kind of timed out probably best case as far as just overall just talent of the teams themselves. Both these teams in each conference are going to be very evenly matched up, especially with Seattle and the Rams, very familiar opponents, a big division rivalry, right? They've already played twice this year. Both those games were very entertaining, and so now they'll have a trilogy grudge match to go to the Super Bowl. So all the marbles on the line for sure in that one. And then also same thing in the AFC, not division rivals, but again, these are the 2 teams that by and large have been the 2 top performing teams in the AFC by and large for most of the season here. New England for a short time was in the number 1 seed before losing at home to Buffalo. And then, of course, they finish out the season and finish as number 2. Denver has been at or near the top of the AFC for the bulk of the season. So, again, man, these are very 2 very competitive and well-matched teams. Denver, of course, going to be without their starting quarterback, Bo Nix. Everybody, I'm sure, is familiar about the news now. We talked about it last week as well. The broken ankle suffered at the very end of that Broncos thrilling matchup in the divisional against the Buffalo Bills. Now, here's something as well about that I saw, and I don't know how true it is, and I only heard it from one source. I didn't dig too much do too much digging on it, but I saw something that said that the fractured ankle from Bo Nix may not have been actually occurred, or it may not have occurred in the game. And I saw or heard something that said that there's speculation that he may have actually fractured it in the locker room. It may have happened in the locker room during the course of just celebrating, maybe jumping around, horse playing, whatever it was, and he may have incurred it there. Where did I heard that just earlier today, legitimately. But then also, but the broader story that had been reported was that he actually somehow fractured it, and they say it was on the kneel down is the play that they were pointing to, that the kneel down when they were just trying to settle the ball before they kicked that field goal to beat the Bills in overtime, that was the play in which the elbow fracture happened. So either way, it's still, it doesn't necessarily change the circumstance for the next week's championship window. But, I thought that was an interesting little nugget, man, when I heard that. I'm trying to think where I heard that at. I heard that earlier today. I just literally heard that earlier today. So no, we'll see. We'll see. But also, man, there's some more news. The coach carousel is in full effect for sure. We've had some more movement on that front in the league. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and put that on the board for us. I'm going to put that on the board. We've had some more movement on that front. 2 teams have filled additional positions. So Robert Saleh hired as the head coach for the Tennessee Titans, and Jeff Hafley hired as the head coach for the Miami Dolphins. But his rise or ascension has been pretty quick paced here. I want to say 2 years ago, he was the head coach at Boston College. And then there was talks then that he was thought very highly of in NFL circles. He leaves Boston College to take over as the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. And I want to say he was in that role. This past season was his second year in that role. Now, specifically, I don't know if I was overly impressed with the Packers' defense, especially like schematically or whatnot. Now, of course, when Micah Parsons was there, he definitely gave that unit a boost or a spark. But as far as just the outward appearance of maybe Jeff Hafley's prowess, or like the defense in and of itself didn't necessarily jump out as special, right? It didn't stand out like a Brian Flores defense stands out, where and it's recognizably so. You know what I mean? Didn't stand out like a Mike McDonald defense like in Seattle, where like, nah, man, this is definitely, it's obvious that there's a guy's fingerprints on it, and it's, it's standalone, right? It stands out. The Packers defense didn't, I haven't felt that way over these last couple of years. Like I said, a couple highlights from Micah Parsons aside this year before he got hurt. But be that as it may, Jeff Hafley is going to be the head coach for Miami. And then in other news as well, man, we have a new or late addition firing, so to say. Sean McDermott relieved of duties as the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. Now, this one as well stirred a little conversation because Sean McDermott, head coach for the Bills, he, of course, was let go. But the general manager for the Bills, Brandon Beane, he was retained. And so a lot of times, well, you know what? I was going to say a lot of times we'll see that those two positions are let go in tandem. But I can't say that because, well, Mike Tomlin stepped down. So, of course, that's a different circumstance. But Baltimore let go of Harbaugh. They didn't let go of their coach. So maybe I won't make that like grand assertion that they go together. But in this scenario, there was a lot of people, not just myself, but there was a lot of folks who felt that either maybe the GM, or at least Sean McDermott should have went along. That maybe both of those people, both of those roles, head coach and GM, were equally to blame for the shortcomings of this Buffalo Bills team with an MVP and Josh Allen, a top quarterback in the league, right here in the prime of his career, especially in a year like this where it really looked like the playoffs had opened up or unfolded to allow or to give Josh maybe a more direct path to the Super Bowl, just with all the circumstances that surround this season. And then they fall short. Now, they fall short for a lot of reasons. We talked about that, that game last week, the game in Denver, a couple of questionable calls, a couple terrible blown no calls, and then also just the play of Josh Allen in those Buffalo Bills themselves that really shot themselves in the foot. So we've went down that rabbit hole already. But in this instance, right, seeing Brandon Beane keep his slot, and then all the blame just being more or less asserted towards Sean McDermott, that didn't quite feel right. It didn't quite feel right because the issues with that Buffalo Bills roster have been the same over these last 5 years. They've unsuccessful. They still haven't found a quality pass rusher. They've done everything from bring in an aging Von Miller, bring in an aging or an oft injured Joey Bosa, right? Even this past year, they've swung and missed in the draft over a number of years. Draft picks like AJ Espinosa, Gregory Rousseau, who did have some bright spots, but they haven't found a true difference maker on that defensive line throughout the tenure of this Josh Allen run so far. And then also the weapons around Josh Allen. Now, outside of James Cook, who's a fantastic player, but they still have yet to replace like a quality number one option that they lost in Stephon Diggs when it was time, when they made the split, when those two parties split, they still haven't replaced or filled that void, and that void has been felt now for several seasons. And then, of course, they swung, and it looks like it's trending toward miss on Keon Coleman out of Florida State. He had a couple healthy scratches this year as is this his second season as the number one draft pick? He's had a couple healthy scratches, and then in the moments or in the games that he's playing, he hasn't lived up to or been the player that they've hoped he would be or become, like I said, to fill that role as a true number one go-to receiver for Josh Allen. And so there's a lot of blame to go around, and honestly, I'll tell you, I don't, and it's weird coming from me because I was a Steelers fan. Of course, I'm still a Steelers fan. Mike Tomlin, my coach for damn near 2 decades, so I get it. But I did feel like maybe Sean McDermott was underachieving. And the reason I can say that I feel now. I'm gonna leave it where it is. I do feel like maybe they had underachieved because you've got, for my money, Josh Allen's the best quarterback in football, and I've said that for a few seasons now. Before the MVP, I felt that way. So in my mind, you've got the best guy. Now, not to say he's head and shoulders above the others, but I think for my money, I've got Josh Allen as the best guy, right? And then also, just the way they've faltered, some of this stuff not their own fault, or some of these things, maybe a bad break or whatever the case. But they haven't gotten over the hump, and I think they've had good enough talent at the top to be able to do so. This year definitely feels like they fell short. Now, I don't necessarily believe that Sean McDermott is to blame for 5 turnovers against the Broncos, right, on the road, a 10-point swing off of those turnovers. Like that's player stuff. Players have to do their part. They have to be held accountable for sure. But it does speak to the overall trend that this team has just failed to get over the hump. But they've done so with some premier top of the league style of talent, an MVP level quarterback in his prime on that roster as well. And so I can see that. But then, the roster shortcomings for me are, I would say, just as or even more of a concern for me than necessarily just Sean McDermott directly. And that Sean McDermott, he's a defensive guy. Let us not forget that defense, despite their rankings in the playoffs, that defense has come up short in the infamous 13-second game in Kansas City, right? We get just a wide open Travis Kelce on just a 7-yard sit down route turns into a 45-yard gain, right? And then of course we know how that game turns out. And so there's been these instances. But be that as it may, Sean McDermott's out. 2 more guys get hired, and I think that brings the tally for openings is back up to 6 total, I want to say. And then we filled 4 positions. We filled 4 of those roles so far this season. And let me see here. Now, another thing as well. Now, I know I say this all the time now, that we primarily focus on NFL, especially during the NFL season. And then even this year, probably not as much college football engagement like on the channel. Now, draft season, like I said, I've already told you, it's draft season for your boy. My still is out, man. It's draft season. I'm watching football just hoping to have a good time. You know what I mean? But it's draft season here, so there will be more college football draft content coming for sure, and especially once we get through the conclusion of this year through the Super Bowl. But by and large, we haven't really delved too deep into the college game. But we did just have the national championship game just this past Monday. We have a 2025 college football Division I national champion, new college champion in the crown. The Indiana Hoosiers completed a fantastic year, undefeated. They go 16-0 in totality, culminating a fantastic year led by Heisman winning quarterback Fernando Mendoza, and they cap it off with what turned out to be a very competitive and entertaining game, especially to close against Miami, University of Miami, in the throwback kind of back to their championship ways for the first time in a long time. And also keep in mind what's crazy about thinking about Miami being as dominant or looking or proving themselves as dominant as they did in this playoff run, especially on the strength of that fantastic defense, and then going to the championship round and giving Indiana all they can handle. There were talks during the playoff selection. People had complaints about Miami making it, right? Miami and Alabama were both teams that there was a contingent of people who felt like maybe they didn't deserve a seat, right? Alabama, Miami, Notre Dame was another. And of those 3, there were arguments for and against all of those teams, right? And then, of course, Miami and Alabama end up getting in. Notre Dame's the odd man out, and then they refuse their bowl. They take their ball and go home, pout a little bit. You know what I mean? And so they sit it out. And then now also Notre Dame, who beat Miami during the regular season, but to see that there was a large discussion or debate about whether or not Miami deserved to make the playoff, and then now this is the team that actually comes out on top and ends up playing in this game against Indiana. So that was just interesting note there. But no, this game, man, like I said, it started a little slow probably for a lot of folks. I think both defenses definitely came to play. And then also as well, man, shout out to the referees a little bit. they let boys play a little bit. You know what I mean? So I'm always generally in favor of, like, I'd rather they let the game go on both sides than over impact the game, right? So I don't want a game called too tightly, right or otherwise. I don't want a game called too tightly where it feels like I'm watching 3 teams play. I don't want to feel like I'm watching the 2 teams playing against each other, then a third team, the referee, who's they're out there, they're being seen so much that it looks like they're trying to score. So I don't want to see that. And so kudos and congratulations are to the Indiana Hoosiers for sure. Shout out to Fernando Mendoza. Shout out to Kirk Cignetti, man. Kirk Cignetti, and it's been said before, and I'm going to say it again. The 30 for 30 on this Indiana Hoosiers championship team and championship run, it's going to be legendary. It's going to be legendary for sure. Kirk Cignetti, of course, one of the many disciples of Nick Saban, right? He spent a lot of time under Saban on that Alabama staff, left that staff, went to JMU, I think they're Division I AA, or they're either Division A. I want to say they're either AA, or no, I don't think they're D2. I think, they're D1 AA. Went down there, won, took a job in Indiana, right? I think Indiana at the time he took that job was quite possibly the worst ranked D1 program in college football at the time, I believe. Some style of crazy stat like that, right? That's the job he takes. And then in one of his opening or welcoming press conferences, when a question was asked about, what he's going to be able to do to bring talent in, or how's he bringing talent in, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Coach Cignetti just sat there with a straight face and called his shot. He said, man, look here. You want to know about me, man? I win. You can Google me. You can check, hey, I win. Google me. That's it. That's the pitch. That's the pitch to come here and play for me in Indiana. And he stood on that. And then we saw what he did building that team. He brought a lot of the players from his AA program at James Madison JMU. He brought a lot of those guys with him to Indiana. They hammered the portal. They filled a team full of veterans, college veterans. These grown folks, man. He's got guys 24, 25, 26 on this roster. This team's got a couple grown men. So they were a very mature team, a very mature group, right? And then it meshed well with his no-nonsense style of coaching. Similar, like I said, from that tree of Nick Saban, extremely detail-oriented to the minute details, right? Man, I could see them now, man. I guarantee they probably start periods with 6-inch steps for the linebackers. I mean, I'm talking about to the detail. And so having an older, more mature program that really is just compatible to buy into that, right? And then also these guys, a lot of the guys that he built on his team, like I said, this is Indiana. Nobody's going to Indiana to play football, or it's not the first place you go for as far as this top tier premier talent. And so he built this team with a lot of cast-offs from other programs, right? Guys that could play, but they didn't check the height weight box, right? Guys that were talented, but they didn't check the size speed box. You know what I mean? So he picked up a lot of these players that kind of get cast off in the corners and was like, no, well, Alabama didn't want you to play. We can come here and play. Oh, okay, no, that's all right. Ohio State, they thought you was too small. That's cool. You big enough to play over here. And so he built a very scrappy, mature team, and a team full of hungry players that were determined to prove themselves. Because again, a lot of these guys been told they're too small. Told you're a step too slow, man. Can't play here. Sorry. You're a step too short, or you're an inch too short, 10 pounds too light. You know what I mean? A lot of these guys that they aren't the 4 and 5 star recruits. A lot of these guys don't have stars, or they got 1 star. This is the team that he built, and then it goes to show what he was able to accomplish. And so, fantastic job by Coach Cignetti. And then I did want to talk a little bit about the game itself. Like I said, the game itself, it starts off, it's a little slow in the first half, not overly exciting, especially for just, especially in college football where the scoreboards light up just as fast as everybody's blinking, right? And so I think at the half, this game was 10-0. So this was a very tightly contested ball game. Like I said, both defenses showed up to play. And then as we got into the second half, specifically that fourth quarter, we got more tight back and forth action. We had several lead changes in this fourth quarter, and we had some very clutch and very fantastic highlight style plays as well, all kind of given to us right there in that fourth quarter. The stats themselves: Fernando Mendoza, your 2025 Heisman winner, completes, like I said, leads his team to an undefeated national championship. Not his best statistical game at all. 16 for 27, 186 passing yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, right? But he did have a critical, would end up being the game-winning rushing touchdown. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. Kneeland Black, running back for Indiana, and they really paced this game in the running game. And that's the formula that they had used most all season. And if you look at the way this Indiana team operated with their offense and how they just how they played, it is that you can see the imprint of Saban's Bama teams, especially those early on teams, right, where they really ran behind Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson, right, where we really focused that offense behind, a Derrick Henry, a TJ Yeldon before then, right, Damian Harris and some of these guys, right, where the run game was really the focal point, and then sound, aggressive defense. And then, of course, you got a capable, smart trigger man like Fernando Mendoza, right? A la what we saw for them with like a guy like AJ McCarron, right? Something like that. So the formula was there all over this Indiana team. And we've seen, man, if it ain't broke, you ain't got to fix it. If it ain't broke, you ain't got to fix it. Kurt Signetti just reminded us of that. Kneeland Black had led the way on the ground, 17 carries for 79 yards. Roman Hemby, 19 carries for 60 yards on the ground. And then, like I said, the receiving numbers are relatively modest. Omar Cooper had 70 yards. Charlie Becker, 65 yards. He made some fantastic clutch plays on back shoulder passes that we'll talk about a little bit. Elijah Shabbat, quiet day, 3 for 28. He had a big drop in this one, bobbled it 3 times, and ended up getting dropped on what would have been a first down conversion while this game was still in the thick of it. So some modest production there. But in the big moments, Fernando Mendoza made a fan of me, man. All right, he made a fan of me, and I know he's run a little hot and cold in the scouting circles. By and large, it is accepted that for most folks that he's going to be the number 1 draft pick, and so I think that's all a foregone conclusion. But he's still been a little polarizing in draft circles about guys either absolutely love. He's kind of polarizing that way. Guys either think very highly of him or think of him as relative just mid, right, for lack of a better word. But made a fan out of me. And the reason being is he's not without his own warts as well. I think like pocket awareness. He took a backside free blitzer rush in Miami. Now they've got a talented defense, but they had overload. They overloaded his left side. It wasn't a disguised blitz at all. Maybe he just thought maybe he assumed that somebody was dropping out, or maybe he thought that his hot was gonna break or come free before the person could get there. But I'm talking like overload blitz on your left, right in your face, nothing fancy. They just rush and they just get the free nickel right there off the edge, just in the overload. And Fernando just eats one on the chin. I don't even think he looks at the guy. And so, there's things like that. But another thing that as well that I appreciate, for one, is, man, he's unflappable in those big moments. There were 2 on the game-winning drive, would end up being the game-winning drive in the fourth quarter. They had 2 or 3. 2 for sure, but they might have had an earlier one, but 2 fourth down conversions that decided this game, right? A 4th and 5 at midfield. He throws a fantastic back shoulder, I think, to Charlie Decker on that right sideline. Charlie Decker also makes a fantastic play on the ball and an impressive catch right there on the right sideline. But that's a fantastic play. He had pressure coming from that backside again, right? Overload style pressure from the backside again. But in this one, he delivers on time, a fantastic pass, a fantastic ball, great catch, right, to keep that drive going. And then on the game-winning touchdown, right? That game-winning touchdown run was a QB draw on 4th and 5. My goodness. And so shout out to Kurt Signetti, right, for even sending that call in. Like I said, 4th and 5, we're going QB draw against probably the best defensive line that anyone faced during this playoff run. Ruben Bain is a top 3 player on most people's draft boards. He's probably widely considered the best defensive player in this draft on a lot of people's boards. And then his running mate, man, Akeem Misador, he's no slouch at all, right? He's fantastic. He's going to be a guy that's going to get drafted in the top 100, I'd say, comfortably it may, especially in this playoff run, he's impressed a lot. He's going to have a Senior Bowl appearance, I believe, coming up. So he may work himself. And if right now he's a top 70, 75 player, he may work himself into closer to a top 40 player when it's all said and done. And so fantastic, like I said, defensive front. We're going to go QB draw on 4th and 5 for the game. For the game with Fernando Mendoza. Now, he's one of these guys that we'll categorize as sneaky athletic, right? Because he doesn't necessarily look it, but he's definitely way more athletic than he appears, for sure. And he's shown that throughout the course of the year, not just in this game, but he's shown that, like, no, he can move, he can scoot. He can move, he can scoot a little bit. You know, he's no Daisy just back there in the pocket, but it was a fantastic play. And it wasn't just wide open. So we get the draw. He comes up through, I want to say, the front side, A-gap. He has to kind of shrug off a tackle. He breaks a tackle, spins off somebody, and then he spins off of a tackle, and then he's got to run and get away from somebody else. He dives for the end zone, takes a big shot from a defender right there at the goal line, holds onto the ball, right? Takes a nice lick, and, man, it's a fantastic, picturesque movie style of run for the touchdown to put themselves in the lead in the national championship game. It's a very storybook and picturesque just drive and play, right? And so, man, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. And then on the other side, Miami, Carson Beck with 19 for 32, 232 yards, had a touchdown in this one. And then, of course, the game for Miami essentially ends on an interception late in the fourth quarter as they're, trying to drive to, go down, and a touchdown and an extra point would have won this game. And so there, midfield, and if you watch the play, I want to say Indiana's in cover 2, right? And so he's got a streak up the left sideline. And so ideally, I think he's with the cover 2. He's thinking he has a chance to hit a honey hole shot to his receiver running the streak on the outside because in the cover 2, generally the corner, he's not necessarily playing, or he doesn't necessarily always carry as far up the field as that corner did. Now, this also goes back and speaks to the prowess of Kirk Cignetti, of his coaching prowess, and the discipline of such a mature team, in that it's because it's taught this way, but it's not always executed this way. And I'll tell you, in cover 2, right, a lot of the times the corners, because they're playing flat essentially, right, and so they're ultra aggressive. They're looking for underneath routes that they can jump, right. So they're sinking with their eyes on the quarterback, and they're looking for an opportunity to jump on something shallower underneath. They don't always maintain and carry the streak that's going to field, because even if there's no direct threat on your side, you still want to be conscious or wary of like a backside 2 or 3 on some type of deep cross or dig or anything, right? Or a late running back out the backfield. So you still want to be conscious. So a lot of times they don't necessarily carry as far downfield as this guy did. But he did, right? He did. There was no immediate threat to that flat, and he's in cover 2. Man, he's 30 yards deep playing underneath on a backside go ball. You know what I mean? So that's just fantastic coaching. Not getting lazy, not taking your foot off the gas, or not getting over aggressive, or just playing it as it should be played, reading your keys that are in front of you. I don't have anything, man. I'm sinking. I'm still underneath this one, then. I'm still underneath this one until 2 or 3 threaten something in front. I'm still sinking. And so fantastic play. He goes up, makes a play on the ball, interception. That's essentially your ball game, right? More or less. And that's the game and that's how the game ended for Miami. But like I said, Carson Beck, 232 yards, touchdown, and that interception. Mark Fletcher Jr., running back from Florida, he got the party started for Miami, scoring in the third quarter. He was the first touchdown. He broke a long 57-yard touchdown run. Finished for 17 carries for 112 yards, 2 touchdowns on the day. The first of which being that almost 60-yard touchdown run, and it was just stretch. I mean, it was just stretch right, and I don't think he got touched at all. It was blocked. It was blocked up perfectly. He takes handoff. He's following a stretch, and he hits it right there in the C gap. Just turns up in the C gap right there between the outside hip of the tackle, inside hip of the tight end. It was smooth. I don't think he had to break stride. You know what I mean? It was just a nice smooth gallop, stretch to that C gap, turn up field, and house call. 57 yards untouched there. So very impressive run there. Now, also, speaking back to Curt Cignetti's defense in Indiana, that was in the third quarter, right? To start the third, they get that first touchdown. He finished with 112 on 17, 57 of those yards, almost exactly half of those carries from that one long touchdown run. So that Indiana defense definitely was pretty stout, and they came to play. Malachi Tony, man. Sensational freshman receiver for Miami, Malachi Tony. He's been a problem. He's been a stud all year long. He showed up and showed out in this one as well. 10 receptions, 122 yards. He had the long touchdown reception from Carson Beck. And then that one as well was like a catch and run. I want to say, and he ended up turning it up or running it up into the right side of the end zone there. But fantastic performance from him as a true freshman on the biggest stage. And like I said, man, he definitely showed up and showed out. Probably the most talented player on the field, or arguably so, right? If we'll say him, your Heisman winner in Fernando Mendoza, right? Ruben Bain Jr., the edge rusher from Miami as well. I mean, so let's say if those are the three best players on the field, talent for talent, I don't know if anybody's more just talented than the freshman receiver Malachi Tony. So his future is extremely bright. And Miami, their future's bright, man. The U's back. It feels like if you're a college football fan, we've been waiting to see the U back since the 90s, man. Since the early 2000s. Because we had 2000, 2001, right? And I think that was the last real vestige there. The 02 team, I think, lost the national championship to Ohio State, to the Buckeyes, Maurice Clarett and those boys. And then since then, man, Miami hadn't been back on this style of stage and in this style of spotlight competing for championships. And so the U, they've tried to be back a few times over these last 2 decades or so, but now with this impressive playoff run, making this impressive playoff or championship game appearance for sure, the U might be back, man. So we'll see. It's always exciting. Speaking of the 2 stud edge rushers for Miami, they both showed up to play. Ruben Bain Jr., like I said, he's probably on a lot of boards going to be the top defensive player in this year's draft. He's definitely, I would say, he's probably going to be expected to go. Well, no, you know what's funny about that? I was going to say he should go top 5, but he's one of these guys that he doesn't necessarily check the boxes, right? He's kind of got that, people label him kind of like that tweener size. He's like 6'3", 275. His arms are short. He doesn't have those, 32, 33-inch arms that you want to see from an edge rusher. He may have sub 31-inch arms. He may have I believe I may have heard he's got arms anywhere from like 29 and change to 30 and change. All right. So he doesn't have the prototypical build that a lot of these teams are looking for. And so he's a guy as well where I'm curious to see how this process is going to play out. Just watching his tape and ability, it would jump out. It would stand to reason that he's a top 5 player in this upcoming draft. But man, the draft is funny and the draft is fickle. And you don't need me to tell you that stranger things have happened than a supremely talented guy being overlooked for all the wrong reasons. And so that aside, by and large, he's going to be a top 5 player on most people's draft boards. He had a sack and a half in this game, 2.5 tackles for a loss. His presence was definitely felt. So he definitely showed up and was as advertised. And then, like I said before, man, his running mate, Akeem Misador, he's made a lot of money for himself as well. A lot of extra eyes on him in this playoff run, and especially with him being the guy across from Ruben Bain Jr., you're going to have an opportunity to get some buckets. And he did. He had 2 sacks in this championship game. He also had 2 tackles for a loss as well. And so their stars, the stars and studs on both of these teams, they showed up and showed themselves well. And so this game, while competitive, to the victor go the spoils, man. Indiana holds on and gets this done. Now, also another thing for Miami, they did start slow, but they left a few points on the board here. And so now this is a 6. Miami jumped out in this game and they were up 10-0, right, to start. But going into halftime, Miami had a chance to put some points on the board via field goal. They missed a last-second halftime field goal from 50. Now, it wasn't necessarily a chip shot, right? It was 50 yards, but it bounces off the upright. And so they leave 3 points there on a kick that was very makeable, of course, bouncing off the upright. So you leave 3 on the ground there. And then, of course, in the third quarter, while this game is still, at this point, I think it's 10-7, right? Because we had the touchdown from Mark Fletcher Jr. at this point. Miami's backed up in their own end zone. They're punting the ball back to Indiana in a 10-7 ball game right there, kind of early, mid through that third quarter. Indiana blocks a punt, recovers that block punt in the end zone for a touchdown, and that really kind of spread this game open and gave Indiana, more breathing room for sure, because Miami was starting to look like they were kind of catching their stride, in this third quarter, starting with that run from Fletcher Jr. for almost 60 yards for a touchdown, and that sparked. They started kind of having success. They had a couple drives, a drive stall on them, but it looked like they had finally kind of found their groove. And so after the block punt, who was it that fell on that punt actually? Isaiah Jones from Indiana. He fell on or recovered that punt in the end zone for a touchdown for Indiana. That opened that game up to 17-10, and that was right there in the 17-7, right there in the third quarter. And so those plays, man, that's 10 points. That's 10 points left on the field, right, in a game you lost by 6, right? If the kick is 6 inches to the left, right, or even less than that, what's the width of one of those uprights? I don't know how wide they are. I don't even think they're 6 inches wide, though, in diameter. Let's say 3 inches left. I think it bounced off the right upright. So 3 inches to the left or right, whichever upright it was, and there's 3 points right there, right? We block up the punt return, right? We get that punt out the end zone. Our defense has been playing stout, right? They're probably going to have good field position because we're punting from our own end zone, so maybe they recover at the 50, but yet and still, maybe we hold them to 3 because that Miami defense had been stout throughout this game, right? Indiana wasn't marching up and down the field. Maybe we hold them to 3. Maybe we get to 3 and now and force the ball right back, and maybe there's no points exchanged on that drive, right? So there's 10 points right there in the margins that, if you're Miami, you definitely look back and you think about those and, hey, man, we left points on the board, and then we gave points away in the third phase of the game, which is just unfortunate. But that's a kudos and a credit to Indiana because those plays just don't happen on accident. Someone has to make those plays, right? They made those plays. They blocked that punt. They recovered that punt for a touchdown, right? It could have been recovered by Miami, and maybe it's going to be a safety, so it's a 2 point instead of a 7. So I don't want to discount Indiana's role in it. But speaking from the Miami perspective, they've got to be feeling like, man, we were right there, and if not for these circumstances right there in the margins, maybe we're national champions. And so, but kudos and congratulations to Miami. Back-to-back years bringing in transfer portal quarterbacks. Cam Ward coming in last year, right? And having a fantastic season. They didn't go on a run to the national championship, but still a fantastic season. That season really putting them and reasserting them on the map as a major player in college football. Going out this year, getting Reclamation Project and Carson Beck from Georgia, he was always a little overly hyped for me. Going into last year, there were people who were crowning him or putting him as the projected number 1 pick. I don't know where that came from. I think it's because he had the prototypical size, height, weight, speed type of thing. But yeah, I think he was a little respectfully, a little overrated going into his last year at Georgia. And then of course that last year at Georgia, definitely underwhelmed. Didn't play well or to the level of expectations at all. He does rebound, go to Miami. And then, kudos to Coach Cristobal down there. Like I said, Reclamation Project rebuilds his own self and his image and goes on a fantastic run for sure. So kudos to those guys. And let me see. I see a few of y'all got in this chat, man, or gotten a view. Let me see who's in this chat. Let's see. Mondu's first one in the board today. Say good evening, Big Nation family. Happy Wednesday. Have a blessed show as always. Appreciate that. I see Rennie in the building as well. So what's going on, RBT family? Let's see. Then let's see here. She said, is Kelsey retiring? Oh, yeah. We already know that, Rennie. Yeah, Kelsey hanging him up. Yeah, Kelsey hanging him up for sure. And in this time, like I said, I think, he's had a fantastic career, Hall of Fame career as well. He's lost 2 steps. You know what I mean? He's lost 2 steps. And then this last year, this is a tough way to have to go out. They tried to run it back one more time, getting so close, losing that last Super Bowl the way they did. Let's run it back one more time, one more for the road, see if we can get one. And they did so. This year's Chiefs team, right? We already know the struggles they went through. It was a rough year. And so, they it's definitely, I think it's definitely time. Now, statistically, I still think he finished amongst the league leaders at his position as far as yardage and maybe touchdowns go. But the deeper context, it's probably time to go ahead and walk away. And I think he's already came out and he said that he was going to finish out that last year, even after Patrick Mahomes went down on injury reserve. He was going to finish it out, ride off until his sunset, man, or Rini, and I definitely expect him to. He'll have his name. He'll have a gold jacket waiting for him here in these next 5-10 years for sure. Miami played well. They spanked Ohio State right there early on too. So for sure. No, so it was 7. It was 10-0 at half, and then Miami got that touchdown run from the running back to open or early in the third quarter, and then that made it 10-7, and then Indiana blocked a punt, and they recovered that punt to make it 17-7 in the third quarter. But it was 10-0 Indiana at halftime. Yeah. But be that as it may, let's talk about these last 2 games of the divisional round as we look forward to the AFC and the NFC championship games. First one up in the Sunday recap, Houston on the road against New England, the 5 versus 2 seed. And man, New England, of course, as we know, they hold on. They win this game 28-16. Drake Maye, 179 yards, 3 touchdowns, did throw an interception. Lost 2 fumbles in this one as well. So that Houston Texans defense, they showed up to play, right? Similar to what I said about Miami with their 2 impactful edge rushers. The Texans have 2 stud guys, probably the best duo in the league, Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter. Both those guys showed up and they played ball. That defense as a whole, more or less, they showed up as advertised and did their part. The struggles of C.J. Stroud this playoff run were drastic for sure, were troublesome. And in this game, even more so than in the game against my Steelers, because he had five turnover-worthy plays in that Steelers game. I think he had 5 fumbles. He lost 2 of them, and he also threw an interception, right, in the Steelers game. In this game, man, that play doesn't clean up. I think this is another 4 or 5 turnover game. They had 4 interceptions thrown in this one. It's just a terrible postseason for C.J. Stroud. And honestly, it probably cost this Texans defense a chance at next week's game against Denver Broncos team without their starting quarterback with a Super Bowl trip on the line. And so, if you're a Texans fan, you got to feel C.J. may have cost us a chance at one this year, honestly. And, I'll be curious to see how my dog Tom feels about that. But getting back to it, Ramondre Stevenson for the Patriots, 16 rushes for 70 yards. Keyshawn Boutte had 3 for 75 and a touchdown, but they were very impactful plays made. He drew the coverage of Derek Stingley Jr., one of the top 3-4 corners in this league, and he held his own. Like I said, there wasn't a lot of offense in this game statistically from either team, but of the 175, 180 yards that Drake Maye threw, 75 of them went to Keyshawn Boutte, and his catches, 3 for 75 and a touchdown, were against arguably the best corner in football. So he definitely showed up and showed himself, worthy. Like, I'm a player out here, and y'all gotta start putting some respect on my name for sure. Stephon Diggs, the veteran, he was solid. 4 catches for 40 yards. He had a touchdown in this one as well. And then Demario Davis also added a touchdown reception for the Patriots. Also, and then getting to that Patriots defense, they played extremely well in this one. Troublesome for C.J. Stroud all game long. That defense in total, 3 sacks, 4 interceptions, and a forced fumble. Carlton Davis, corner formerly from the Buccaneers, now with the Patriots, he had 2 interceptions in this game. Marcus Jones had a 26-yard pick 6 against C.J. Stroud in this game as well. And then Corey Woodson, another DB from the Patriots, he had an interception and a fumble recovery in this game as well. And so that Patriots defense at home, they played fantastic. And man, I'll tell you, C.J. Stroud had, like I said, he back-to-back troublesome and worrisome games. Now, unfortunately for the Texans and C.J. Stroud in the game against my Steelers, right, he was able to bail himself out of a lot of those bad spots by massive third down completions to Christian Kirk, right? But he wasn't able to kind of bail himself out in that way against his game against the Patriots, and he has had a terrible showing. Terrible showing. Woody Marks 14 carries, 17 yards, and a fumble lost in this game. And this is a week after having his career best day against my Steelers with his first career 100-yard game. Comes back out in this one, utterly shut out. 14 carries for 17 yards, and he lost a fumble. Ugly day there. Christian Kirk coming off of his best game in probably the last few seasons in that playoff win against my Steelers. He shut down 2 catches for 20 yards. He did have the long touchdown in this one from C.J. Stroud. Jaden Higgins, the rookie, 6 for 59. I mean, this was just a rough day all the way around for that offense. Nick Chubb had 4 carries for only 14 yards. I mean, it was just a tough go there. And then speaking of those edge rushers for the Texans, like I said, they did show up. Daniil Hunter had 2 sacks in this one. Will Anderson had 3 sacks in this one. That defense, by and large, like I said, was as advertised, and they played tough, but it's hard to, it's one thing to try to have to defend and play against the Patriots, right? The other team. And there's another thing to also have to play against your own quarterback, man, when he's insisting on putting the ball in the other team's hand. 4 interceptions in this one. And so, man, it was a rough day. And then Woody Marks as well, he put one on the ground. And so, but kudos to that Texans defense. And if you're the Patriots now, you've got to feel good about next week. You've got to feel good about it, right? Going against those Broncos, one of the top defenses in this league for sure. They are going to be without their starting quarterback, right? And so I know we've talked before, and I'm not going to get too deep into the preview because next week's games are just on Sunday, so we'll just talk about those games on Sunday like regular business. So I won't get into a preview today, but can't wait to see that game. Then, of course, the Sunday night conclusion. Fantastic ball game, fantastic entertaining ball game from the Rams on the road against the Chicago Cardiac Bears. And the Cardiac Bears did not disappoint. They lived and died by that sword that is digging ourselves in a hole and climbing right back out of it in the waning moments of a close, tight game and coming out on top. They fell just short in this one, but there again, they same things that make you laugh, make you cry. They won and lost true to their own identity. Aggressive 4th down attempts in the first half, regardless of field positioning, right? Midfield, in our own backfield, doesn't matter, right? If we feel good about it, we're going. They stayed true to that mantra. It bit them, right? The overtly aggressive play from Caleb Williams that oftentimes results in turnovers, those plays were still there. Caleb Williams threw 3 interceptions in this game, including the final one at the end of the game. So everything that's made the life of the Chicago Bears difficult was in this game, right? And then everything that's made them great that got them to the number 2 seed was in this game as well. For the Rams, Stafford goes 20 for 42, 258 yards, no touchdowns or picks. He did lose a fumble in this one. Kyron Williams really paced the day in the running game, 21 carries for 87 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Puka Nacua held in check relatively, right? 5 for 56. That Bears defense, that Bears secondary, by and large, played very well. Devontae Adams, 2 catches for 24 yards. Now, here's the thing. And we talked about it last week in the game, the Bills versus the Broncos. When is a catch a catch? When is the catch, when is the completion of a catch, valid? And then also when the other team or the defender strips or takes away the ball, when is that valid and allowed and when is it not? Because a similar play would end up being one of the nails in Buffalo's coffin there, where Brandon Cooks goes up, catches the ball. He falls down to the ground with the ball in his possession, knee, hip, all his body hits the ground. He's contacted by a defender. They roll over. The defender takes the ball away from him while they're rolling over on the ground, and that one gets awarded to the Broncos. Well, in this game, similar circumstance is right there late in this game, 4th quarter, or was that overtime? 4th quarter or overtime? I think it may have been in the overtime, right, that led to the field goal. Pass play to Devontae Adams. He catches the ball. He goes to the ground. As he's going to the ground, defender contacts him. There's a struggle for the ball. Defender rips the ball away and rips the ball out of his hands as Devontae's going down to the ground. That one instead, the ball is not awarded to the Bears, but that one is left with possession for Devontae Adams and the Rams, that the catch was concluded and that he was already down by contact. And so, again, like we already talked about it last week, so I'm not going to reopen the wound fully, right, and rehash it, but that's what's most frustrating, and especially for, let's say, Sean McDermott, who lost his job after that game, right? Now, not to say that I think it's fair to say that Sean McDermott was on a hot seat, because I think like we said before, they've had opportunities and they haven't got over the hump, but they don't have the same context as some other coaches, like a Mike Tomlin, in which you don't have stability or premium talent at the most important position on the field. You don't have a MVP quarterback in his prime, right? And so that aside, he was already on the hot seat. I can see that. But that call, bad call, blown call, a couple bad calls and blown calls in that game may have ended up being the determining factor costing his job. Because if that play is called in Denver the same way that it was called in Chicago, then they win that game. He's not fired this week, right? So that's what's most frustrating for a lot of fans and for a lot of teams on both sides, the inconsistencies, right? Because if it's called one way a week before, mind you, just last week, and there's not a lot of games, so we all are aware and know the call. There was discourse about that call all week leading up to this one, into this game. And then we have that same situation played back out, and now that call goes the other way. That is what's definitely most frustrating for everybody involved, man, because that's nonsense. But again, similar to what I said about the Bills shooting themselves in the foot, getting in their own way, putting themselves in position to lose a game that otherwise looks like you could have won or even walked away in. I felt the way about Chicago, because I'll tell you, Chicago for me felt like the better team in this game, man. Chicago for me felt like the better team, and I didn't imagine that going in. Like, I thought that they were definitely wildly streaky, up and down. They played with a lot of, it's no holds barred. It's wild gunslinging at its finest, both in the coaching game and in the quarterback play. So I definitely felt that the Rams were the actual better team, but whether or not the Cardiac Bears can work some magic. But when these two teams were lined up and on the field, Chicago looked to be the better team. But again, they can't get out their own way. And maybe, pride to be the fall of us all is an old saying, right? Pride to be the fall of us all. And I get you want to do what got you there. They got there playing that style of ball. They got there coaching that style of ball. So I can understand and I can respect that. But you don't also have to hold yourself prisoner to that. Because that's what bit Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson in his time there, like holding on to that prideful, this is what we do, so we're doing it. You know what I mean? You don't have to live and die in those margins, right? It's our choice. We don't owe anybody anything. We don't owe anybody putting ourselves in bad position or passing up points. Because they turned down field goals in this one. They turned down short red zone field goals, and in the game you lose 20-17 at home in overtime. Maybe you should have took those 2 threes, right? Maybe we should have took those layups. We don't always have to hit a half-court three. We could have took those layups, but we didn't. And it came back to bite, right? We had seen, I think, 7 games now this season in which they had found a way to dig themselves at that hole with some type of miraculous, once-in-a-lifetime style play. Caleb Williams in this one, my guy. The touchdown on 4th down to tie this game up and send it to overtime. And we've said this three or four times specifically about Caleb Williams throughout this season, right? Man, that's the best throw we've seen in a year, in 2, in a decade. We said it again in this game. The fantastic throws that we saw against Green Bay, trumped. Who would have thought trumped? 4th and backed up. I think it was like 4th and 14 anyway. They get backed up, or they had a penalty that backed them up, whatever it was. It's 4th and a mile. He's backing up. He's getting chased. He runs back another 20 or so yards. He throws what ends up being, and let me tell you how special and magnificent the throw was, right? It's a 14-yard pass play. The ball traveled 50 yards in the air because he had to retreat a good 30 yards and avoid a rush, right? He's got pressure bearing down on him. He's running backwards. He keeps his eyes up. Shout out to Cole Kmet for staying live in the end zone. And Caleb Williams throws, like I said, the best individual single pass we've seen in 5 seasons. I'm going to have to do some thinking about the last time we saw a more impressive throw. And we've seen some lasers. We've seen some very special throws. We'll have to go back a while to find a throw better than the one Caleb Williams did to find Cole Kmet in the end zone on 4th down in a winner-go-home circumstance with the game on the line. All the weight of the situation, the throw itself, and I'm talking pure on-the-money dime. You can't throw that ball any better. Cole Kmet didn't have to do any heavy lifting, just turn and put his hands like this. And when they tell you drop in the bucket, it was delivered first class. Fantastic throw from Caleb Williams, right? And so they end up going to overtime. They had chances in the overtime. He ends up throwing an interception. I think he was DJ Moore is running essentially a deep dig going from left to right. They had a clear route. I think somebody ran some style of post concept over the top. He's on the dig to come underneath, right? Opposite way action. And he leads DJ Moore. And then, commentary, they said maybe it looked like DJ Moore gave up on it or didn't run through it. Be that as may, interception, Rams, and that was essentially the ball game for the ball game for them. Rams, of course, like I said, they go down, they get the controversial catch and strip fumble that wasn't ruled a fumble by Devontae Adams. They get a field goal, they get out of there, they win that game 20-17, and now next week, they'll go back and face a familiar opponent with a chance to go to the Super Bowl on the line against the number 1 seed Seattle Seahawks as well. So definitely can't wait to see that game. As far as the numbers, 23 for 42 for Caleb Williams, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, the 3 interceptions we talked about. He had 5 carries for 40 yards on the ground as well. DeAndre Swift, 19 carries for 76 yards in this one. DJ Moore, 5 for 52 receiving with a touchdown. Cole Kmet had the fantastic touchdown catch to send the game to overtime from that throw we were talking about. 3 catches for 31 yards in that touchdown. And then Colston Loveland, rookie tight end who really came on second half of the season, he finishes with 4 catches for 56 yards in this one as well. And so, very entertaining game, especially at the close there for sure. Definitely gave us tons of stuff to talk and bicker about in the time from that game till now for sure. But it still was a very entertaining game. And then other than that, like I said, man, that's it. We're in the Final Four, right? There's 2 games left. Both those games are going to be played on Sunday. So we'll be back on Sunday morning, 10 a.m. We'll just do a standard preview. We'll talk about both those games. My thoughts on those, predictions, you name it, all the whole nine. Any additional updates throughout the season. Like I said, the coach carousel is still in full effect. We've had 2 additions. We've had another team subtract a head coach. And so teams are still interviewing as the process is playing out. So as more news becomes available, we'll get in here and we'll talk about it. But other than that, that's it. That's all. Like I said, there's not a lot to talk about this week. There was 2 games on Sunday, and we had a college football championship game. That's all we had. And so we're going to leave it right there. I do appreciate everybody that came through this evening for sure. Shout out to Madu, shout out to Rini. I seen y'all in that chat. I see a few more of y'all in the chat. Man, everybody didn't drop nothing in. I see a few more of y'all in the views, man. Everybody didn't drop nothing in the chat today. But I'm telling you right now, you better get it while you can, because other than that, you know what time it is. Oh, hold on. I didn't put you on the board, though. Let me see here. There you go, Rini. And let me find it real quick. I see Mom Deuce was in here as well. There was Rini in there. And then I see a few more of y'all, man, that didn't drop anything in the chat. But it's all good because guess what? It's time to wind it on down, and wind it down we will. Say it with me at home. We say the same thing every week. If I forgot to say your name, damn, my bad. But charge it to my head. Don't charge it to my heart. You know I'm thinking about you. I appreciate everybody that did come through tonight. Like I said, man, wasn't a lot going on. Short week, not a lot of games, but I appreciate y'all coming in, tapping in with your dog, going over these games until Sunday. You know what? May push that start time back. It may be an 11 o'clock start instead of a 10. We've only got the 2 games. It's going to be similar to this this past Sunday's game. We'll get like a mid-afternoon and then a night game. So we'll probably push that start time back, but y'all be on the lookout for that. But until then, until Sunday, I'll see y'all then. Have a good rest of the night. Peace.